So welcome to the Exploring Careers in Finance session. What we're going to do before we get into the session is we're going to have an introduction of all the panelists that we have. And then after we do that, we're going to go into some of the questions that I'll ask for the panelists. And these are also going to include the pre-prepared questions that you all sent us. So if we can start in terms of introductions, you give your name, where you work, and maybe if you went to a high school in Zimbabwe, just mention what high school you went to. So we can start with you, Tongai, and then go over to Tendai, Tafara, Munya, and then Contessa.
Hi, St. Dominic's. My name is Tongai Makoni. I went to Prince Edward High School. I work in DC at the World Bank. I've been in the US for about 8 years now.
Hi, St. Dominic's. My name is Tendai Madenyika. I work at the World Bank as well. And I went to Regina Mundi, but I actually did get a place to St. Dominic's. It was my first choice, but family pressure.
Hi everyone. My name is Tafara Muwandi. I did high school at Kutama College. Been in the US like 3 years. I work for a cybersecurity startup in Silicon Valley.
Yes. Hi, my name is Munyaradzi Chaunzwa. Went to high school at Howard High School. I've been in the United States for 15 years, and I work at Nike out in Portland, Oregon.
Hi, St. Dominic's. My name is Contessa Mwedzi. I went to school at Arundel, and I currently now work at the International Monetary Fund here in DC for the office that invests the staff pension of the staff at the International Monetary Fund. And I've been in the US for about 6 years now.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you very much for your introductions. So what I want to do is get into some questions, and I think we'll focus mainly on Munya, Contessa, and Tendai. Can you please tell us a little bit about what your companies do and what your role is in terms of fulfilling the aims of the company? So maybe we can start with you, Tendai, and then head over to Munya and then Contessa.
Sure. So the World Bank Group is an international organization that consists of 5 institutions. And I work at the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which together with the International Development Association comprise what's commonly known as the World Bank. The other 3 institutions comprising the bank group are the International Finance Corporation, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, and the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. And in general, the World Bank's mission, right, is to end poverty and improve shared prosperity. So in that theme of things, we essentially make out loans to developing countries for different capital programs. I work specifically in a unit that's called Financial Solutions, Project Finance and Guarantees. And what we do essentially is to help mobilize commercial financing for infrastructure projects. So for example, I'm working on a project in Eastern Europe, and the government is exploring 12 investment programs into their transport sector. So they want to build, and extend their road network. So part of what we do is to help them explore how to finance such large projects. And then another part of it as well is to think through how the World Bank can be better suited to participate in such an investment, whether by providing loans for either technical assistance or investment project financing, or to provide what's called a guarantee, which is essentially a risk mitigation instrument that helps governments borrow on the international markets by providing, say, for example, tenor extension for the loans, or to just drive down the borrowing cost. These are some elements that a guarantee from the World Bank can help provide, but there are more, and that's it in a nutshell for now, I guess.
Yeah. So, so for me, I work for Nike. So Nike designs, they manufacture and distribute athletic sportswear, footwear, apparel, and equipment. And I think we like to pride ourselves that we are in the business of helping every athlete reach their full potential. And the definition of an athlete is, if you have a body, you're an athlete. So for what I do, I'm a finance director. I think I'm having connection issues.
No, there's some feedback. I think Farah logged in twice.
Yeah, please continue, Munya.
So for what I do at Nike, I'm a finance director for the integrated marketplace. As finance director, my responsibilities span around helping create our strategy for our global expansion and how we run the business throughout the world, as well as how we operationalize the business and come up with new business models for how we do business around the world as well. Yeah.
Okay. So for me, the international to the World Bank, and the IMF's main goal is to engage in economic research and to provide technical assistance and policy advice to finance ministers and central bank governors all around the world. The office I work in provides money of staff so that when they retire, they have money or pension that they can keep drawing from so that they can do their day-to-day lives. Specifically in my team, I work in a team that measures the performance of our portfolio on a day-to-day basis, because the head of our office, he needs to know that information so he can make strategic decisions about what to invest in, what to cut down on, what to add more money to. Another project I'm working on is when we engage in investment agreements with managers who manage our money. We enter into contracts, we sign a contract with them, and there's certain guidelines that the manager who's managing our money has to abide by, of which we have 150 managers. So these are quite a number of contracts. And each year we just take stock to make sure that the managers are actually abiding by those guidelines by sending them a compliance questionnaire, and they give it back to us, and then we analyze that information, and we report back to our head to make sure that they are in line with what we had originally set out for them to do. Yeah, I think that's two of the main things that I do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. That was very interesting, just hearing the kind of difference in things that you do, from Tendai working on project finance, commercial finance, and then Munya working for Nike, which is more focused on creating athletic kind of apparel for people that basically want to stay in shape, I guess, right? I think that's part of the mission, I believe. And then also from you, Contessa, learning about the technical assistance you provide for fund managers. Now, a question I have for Tafara as well as Tongai is, did you ever picture yourself going into finance? When you were in high school, was that your goal, right? Is that what you studied? Was that always your dream, or did something change? What was it that led you to getting into finance? So maybe we can start with you, Tafara.
Yeah, thanks. I think for me, when I was in high school, I never thought I wanted to be, anywhere close to anything to do with finance. I wanted to be an engineer. I think my older brother is a chemical engineer, so I thought I was going to be an engineer of some sort. But I then sort of had a meeting just after A levels with one of my dad's friends, who's like a very successful businessman, and sort of through that conversation, one of the things that he mentioned was that super smart people want to do difficult things, which is maybe why I wanted to go into engineering. But he said that sometimes careers in finance are not as difficult, but sometimes end up being more rewarding. So sort of after that discussion, I had a point of reflection. Is when I decided to go and study something in finance, but I still wanted something difficult, so I studied actuarial science. So that's, I guess, in a nutshell, how I ended up there.
Great, and just to add an extra question on that. So at A level, what did you study when you decided you wanted to do actuarial science?
I studied maths, physics, and chemistry.
Great. Okay, and then over to you, Tongai. What made you decide you wanted to work for an organization such as the World Bank? Was that what you wanted to do initially when you were in secondary school?
Oh, I think the question is for Tendai.
Sorry, I thought I heard Tongai.
I heard Guy as well.
It was actually targeted to you, Tongai.
Yeah, so I studied maths, MOB, and economics. So I knew that I always wanted to go to do business finance, because one of my mentors, I admired him so much. His name is Douglas Mambura. So I used to watch him on TV, and I just wanted to be like him. So I mainly researched what he did, his trajectory of life. So that was my point of reference. So I kind of knew that I wanted to be in that field.
Great. And so one question that our students had sent that they wanted to hear from you as panelists are kind of along the lines of skills are required when it comes to getting into your career. So before you actually got your job, were there any particular skills that you were asked to have? And what were those skills that you built up? Maybe we can ask that question to Tendai and Kontesa. So we can start off with you, Tendai.
Sure. So just to make sure I got the question, it's what skills that were required for the position that I have, is that it, or just along the way?
So pretty much the skills you required into your current position.
I see. Okay, so my current position at the World Bank is a financial analyst. And essentially, the basic requirements is, a bachelor's degree in a relevant field, right? And a minimum of, maybe, 5 years in, similar roles. And the work that we do, or that I do on a day-to-day basis, involves analyzing, financing options, right, for different projects. And so that uses a lot of finance knowledge. I work with Microsoft Excel a lot of the times. And I use that tool to build what's called a financial model, which is essentially a company's financial statements in Excel to a certain extent, right? Because you want to see what the impact of raising new debt will have on, say, the revenue projections of a certain company. And because in the line of work that I do, we interact a lot with governments, which are our clients, as well as members from the private sector. who we tend to approach for interest in participation of certain projects. So you have to be financially savvy, right? To know what it means when you're saying, oh, the cash flow projections and that sort of thing. So knowledge of finance is one thing. And another thing is, to a large extent, and I think this is something that's often overlooked, is interpersonal skills, right? Because we interact with a lot of different stakeholders in a project because we want it to be successful. And you work with the government, which is the client. You approach private sector participants. So these could be banks from different countries, and to gauge their interest in participating in a project, and so forth. It's just a wide range. And so being able to communicate your ideas and to have an opinion about certain things is highly valued in my line of work. And I would also mention that first, you have your skill sets and everything, but being able to, I think, think through big picture on certain projects. And that sounds very vague, even as I hear it. But in a nutshell, I would just say, obviously, have the education or academic qualifications, a bachelor's degree or a master's preferred, because this is a World Bank. They tend to hire people with a postgraduate degree. So this could be an MBA, like Munya and Tafara, they have MBAs, or you can have what's called a CFA, a Certified Financial Analyst. And I think I'll stop there for now.
Great, thank you. And then maybe with you, Contessa, what skills were required for you to get into your job?
Okay, so how I got into my job, I took a very unconventional approach. I didn't really have a background in finance, and I studied international studies and French. So this is just to give hope to all those people out there who may not know what they want to do right now. But in certain areas of the financial services industry, there's room for you to go start your job and to learn on the job. And so my boss and my team, they are more for that approach. I mean, not more for that approach, but they accommodate you if you don't have a background in finance traditionally. But things that a requirement I needed to have was to have a bachelor's degree, definitely. I do a lot of work with Excel. So I knew Excel from school, from college. I did different projects using Excel. So I think now it's just been building upon my knowledge base and expanding it and using skills that are relevant to my position right now. The other thing, another skill that I am honing is research skills. Because before we enter into an agreement with a manager, we need to first do research on managers. Is this manager a good fit for us? We have different criteria that we look for, or warning signals that we try and.
Hello, Contessa.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. But then there's an echo, so you have to. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay. So which part should I start from? Which part?
No, they could hear you. They were just testing to see if the microphone's working.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So research, definitely. And then this isn't required for my role right now, but it's very encouraged in the office for you to pursue the CFA designation that Tendai mentioned briefly, which stands for Chartered Financial Analyst. And basically it equips you with tools to invest people's money. And it's an exam that is 3 levels. And I am currently working my way through getting that designation at the moment.
That is fantastic. And I think one of the interesting points that came up was this concept of a financial model and using Microsoft Excel. Maybe you can explain to us a little bit, what is a financial model? What does it do, right? Maybe just the bare kind of basics of a financial model so that the students could understand. So maybe we could address that to either Munya or Tendai.
Okay. Yeah, I could just take that at a very basic level. So financial model is, I mean, you can think about architects and things like that when they are designing a building. They will kind of use a small version and call that the model of that building that they'll use to design what they want to construct. So same applies to when you are running a business. Sometimes you want to create what you call like kind of the model or the financial model for how you run the business. So it is a mathematical representation of how you make money, which will be your revenues, and what the costs will be to operate that business. So you would have like gross margins and operating costs to get to a profit level, right? So it will kind of contemplate an income statement, right, which talks about from your revenue all the way to your profit. Well, it's basically from your revenue, which is the money you make, minus all the costs you would have to get to a profit number. However, it may also include other parts of kind of how money will flow in the business. So there'll also be sometimes a balance sheet, which is something that talks to how the business is being financed, whether you're going to go borrow money to buy equipment and assets business, or whether you are going to raise equity and things like that. So those things would fall into the balance sheet section, as well as sometimes it will have like a cash flow statement, which speaks to how money is flowing in the business as well. So that's like it at a super high level. The idea here is to be able to test, companies usually want to test their business ideas to see kind of if I have a business idea, does it make enough money? And what are the costs in terms of that I would need to incur so that I can figure out if actually this business is sustainable. So that's one use of a financial model. Other uses of a financial model will also include stress testing. If we're going to go borrow money to finance a business, will we be able to pay back in the business in a sustainable way? And it can also be used to stress test other aspects of kind of how you want to grow the business. If you have an opportunity to make an investment in option A versus option B, which one is a better option? So all in all, when you do all that analysis, it's usually used to help business executives make decisions about how they want to run a company or the investments that they want to make to grow a company. So that's it at a super high level. Other users of a financial model would be people like investment bankers. I myself used to be an investment banker back in the day, when they want to see how to finance a business to make sure that the business is long-term sustainable if they want to lend to a business and things like that. Tendai, you can add other things as well if I missed something.
No, I think that's a very comprehensive explanation.
Great. So I have a follow-up question, and I have this one for Tafara, right? So you decided to go into the track of actuary. Now, in that profession, sort of, what are the ties to finance, right? We've heard things regarding looking at financial models and modeling how a business will look in terms of its success and trying to do stress testing. Do any of those elements come up in your role when you are an actuary, or is it something that's completely different?
Yeah, thanks. So when you're an actuary, I think some of those components do come up, but I think the main difference between being an actuary, and I guess, being in finance is what we call contingencies. So actuaries work with probabilities mainly. So if you have a business where how much money you're going to make or how much money you're going to spend is unknown.
Tafari, did they drop off? I don't see them.
It looks like they dropped off.
Oh yeah, they could have. Cool, thanks.
1 second, please. I think they've joined back on. I think we have them back. 1 second, let me just call and confirm if they can hear us.
Say something?
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, finally we can hear you guys. I'm so happy, yeah. I miss St. Dominic's, man. Goodness. How are you guys doing? Good? Yeah? Okay. Good. Oh, I'm happy to hear your voices again. Okay, so maybe Tafara, you can continue. Tafara was just talking about his career in being an actuary and how that relates to finance.
Yeah, thanks. So what I was saying was usually sort of how I look at it is when you do accounting is, recording, the financial history of a business to say, what happened last year? Did we make money last year? And, when you start going into finance, you're trying to project to then say, if we make these particular changes or we make these investments, how much money are we going to make? So when it comes to actuarial science deals with the same thing, but for businesses whose revenues and costs are unknown and you need to have probabilities. So examples of such businesses are insurance companies. If, for example, you are insuring life insurance cover and you're giving life insurance to people, your expenses in terms of your costs depends on how many people are going to die in the following year. So we develop models that will predict how many people are going to die or how many people are going to have car accidents, or if it's a pension fund, how many people are going to fall sick for medical insurance purposes and stuff. So basically...
Sounds very positive, Tafara.
Yeah, so we also deal with things like investments and banks and, credit, trying to predict the probability that you will get your money back if you've loaned money to people. So anywhere where, finance is involved, but your revenues and your costs are unpredictable or difficult to predict or not known in advance, that is where actuaries come in, and we build statistical models that try and estimate these numbers for a business.
Okay. And so from the students, how many of you are interested in getting into auditing or getting into finance? Can you raise your hand? Okay. That's a fair number. So for you, Tafara, right? You ended up going into actuary. So what is the difference when we look at becoming an auditor or becoming an actuary? Is it a separate kind of step in terms of what you need to study at undergraduate to then what you study in university? And then the qualifications in terms of ACA or CPA qualification, or it's not that different? Can you explain?
Yeah, so these are very different courses. So when I went to NAST, accounts sat in the accounting department, and actuarial science was in the department of actuarial science and insurance. So these are very different sort of courses. In terms of, how you become an actuary versus how you become a chartered accountant, I think for you to become a chartered accountant, there's, one of two routes. I think the first one is you can go and do your articles sort of straight out of A-level. I think some of the audit companies still take people. So you go and join straight out of A-level. You work there for a few years while you do your, what they call their BComt, which is your Bachelor of Commerce in Accounting. Then after you get that, there's a few other exams that you need to write, including your CTA as well as your board exams, which you do after you've gotten your undergrad, and then you will qualify as a CPA or a chartered accountant. So that's sort of one route. And then the other one would be, to finish your A levels and then apply to do accounting at a university. And then, after you graduate accounting, you then go and join one of these audit companies to do your articles. So your articles is like an internship where you're working with these companies and gaining experience, because the experience is a requirement for you to become a chartered accountant. So it's the same thing if you want to become an actuary. You would need to, so for you to be an actuary, there's a series of 15 exams that you need to write. These exams are offered by what they call either the ASA, which is the Association of Actuaries in South Africa, or there's another association in the UK. They offer a series of 15 exams that you need to write. So the fastest way to do it is to do an undergrad in actuarial science, which means by the time you graduate from university, you already have done maybe 10 of the 15 exams. Then when you start working, you can study for the other 5 and finish. But if you don't get into actuarial science undergrad, that is not a problem. You can study any degree in the world that you want. Then what you would need to do is to just start writing those exams and studying for them from scratch. And once you finish those 15 exams, there's also an experience requirement. You need to have 3 years working in an actuarial field, and then you will be a certified actuary.
Great, thanks. And then just to go, I think we've kind of looked at what the perspective is in terms of if you want to go into accounting or if you want to be an actuarial scientist. Now for you, Munya, and you mentioned a term that was very interesting, that you are in investment banking. Can you explain what that kind of track looks like? If one of our students decides she wants to go into investment banking, starting from high school, what are the steps that she needs to take going into university, and then from there moving into the actual role? I think you're on mute, Munya. Okay, while Munya is having those issues, maybe we can move on to you, Tendai. If you could maybe explain what that trajectory looks like to becoming a financial analyst. Thinking from high school, things the students should think about doing now up until university, and then getting into it.
Sure. So in high school, I studied maths, accounting, and geography. And my goal was to become an accountant, only because, that's what my sister wanted to be. But in college, I studied economics, right? And I took a number of corporate finance classes while I was in college. And I also did 2 internships. One was at a bank, a local bank, and I worked in their wealth management department. And I should also backtrack and say, after I finished high school, I worked at CBZ for a year. I was in their card center, so slightly removed from the nitty-gritties of banking and finance. But I guess from that experience, I was able to learn a bit more about just the banking system in general. And so back to when I was in college, I studied econ, and I did internships. My second internship was at an investment bank, and I worked in their financial institutions group. So our clients were banks, asset management companies, financial technology companies, what are the other 3? Insurance companies and specialty finance companies as well. And so I would definitely say that my internship gave me a leg up in, setting the stage for my career in finance, because we went through a very rigorous training program where we were taught, the basics of finance, the basics of accounting, and also just, how to use Microsoft Excel, which are, very important tools that you interact with a lot when you're conducting financial analysis. And also, as Contessa mentioned, when you're a financial analyst, you need to do a lot of research, right? Because you want to see how the past performance of companies or industries or sectors help to inform, together with current events that are taking place, and maybe technological improvements, they help inform future performance to a certain degree. So those skills were definitely honed, or started to be developed at that stage. And after my internships, I worked for 2 years on Wall Street. This was after I graduated, and I was still working in financial institutions. And Munya was, one of the people that I definitely reached out to when, thinking about, career in investment banking, and, what are some of the things that I can do to succeed, and so forth. And so I would also add that when I was working in investment banking, some of my peers had studied philosophy, art history, theology. And so I would encourage students to explore, be curious when you study in university, just explore things that are of interest to you, because to a large extent, a career in finance is almost like a vocation, right? You learn by doing. There's some I would definitely say my current role requires someone who has previous experience in finance. But when you're starting out, there are definitely a lot of industries that will train you. So you don't necessarily have to have, a bachelor's in finance, because a lot of the skills that you learn as you study, and doing analysis on, different sectors and doing research, are the same skills that will complement a career in finance. And so for me, I went through investment banking, the internships, and then the actual, work experience. And those are, experiences in my profession that I tap into right now, because my role requires someone who has that financial experience. The World Bank has an analyst program for people who don't necessarily have a master's degree, and so there you can get a lot of exposure to how the bank does its business. But I would definitely say that the International Finance Corporation, which is one of the partner institutions within the World Bank Group, is one that focuses a lot more on like finance. Whereas the World Bank, we do a lot of finance programs. And so I guess all this to say that if you're starting out, you're going from high school and then college, you want to think about professional experiences that will hone your finance experiences, because not all companies will train you when you join. And so I would definitely, recommend internship programs or entry-level analyst programs when you're starting out, because those will help you to develop the financial know-how and experiences that will help you to advance in your career and at other organizations or institutions that are looking for people with the experience to hit the ground running.
Thank you. And so I think an interesting piece that has been mentioned, right? For a lot of the times, our students at St. Dominic's believe that, if I want to go into finance, I should definitely study something finance related. And Contessa, you studied international studies and French. So what experiences did you build that enabled you to go into finance, considering that your background was not purely financially based?
I think maybe once I started working in my office, I showed that I was actually interested in the sector, and I took initiative and took steps to become more well-versed in the sector. So that would be the short answer. But, I would encourage, all of you students where if you end up with a resume and it looks like your background has nothing to do with the current position that you have, even if when you're in that position working at McDonald's 2-3 years ago over the summer, even if at that time you didn't know what you were doing, when you narrate yourself to a potential employer, you narrate yourself in such a way where it seems like working at McDonald's at that point made perfect sense. You know, you just like connect the dots and make them believe you. Yeah, I mean, that's just a skill. But when I was in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I did maths, French, and accounts for A level. When I went to high school, I changed my major a couple of times. First it was econ, then it was international studies, then it was French, then it was back to international studies again. An NGO in Paris. I worked at an NGO in Uganda. I came here. I worked for a special events lighting company. And, you know, I ended up here, and this seems to be like, you know, something interesting that I think of pursuing. So I guess my takeaway or something that I want you to take away is that, you know, in life you might experience different experiences and end up somewhere where you never expected. So just be open to all those experiences.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
As someone who worked at a McDonald's when I was in college, I actually put that on my resume for when I was applying, or my CV, when I was applying for the internship at the wealth management department. And there was one finance director who said to me that, oh my goodness, you made working at McDonald's seem so sexy. Now I want to look for a job there. So I guess it's true to, as Contessa mentioned, is, when you perhaps, think about careers in finance that you might be interested in. Finance is so broad, right? And so it can be hard to know exactly where you want to get into, because sometimes we are limited by what we know. So the traditional fields like accounting or actuarial science or, banking and so forth. And so perhaps one thing that you could, how you could approach your preparation and development for careers in finance is look at maybe some job descriptions for certain fields you're interested in, and look at the skills that they require. And in your experience, just think through, okay, how can I develop, some of these skills now? If I want a career as a financial analyst, and it says they need people who can communicate effectively, what can you do right now? Maybe in class, it can be raising your hand up more often, asking questions, and those are things that you can definitely start cultivating now.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to add something onto that. I think one key nuance in sort of a lot of the things that have been said in terms of, the degrees that you choose, I think depends on where you study. I think if you study in the US, it's a lot easier for you to hop around from one degree to another. It's a lot easier for you to do degrees that are not related and then switch into, doing something else like Contessa did. However, if you're going to do your degree in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, I think it's a lot more limiting. In terms of it's very difficult for you if you go to the University of Zimbabwe and study international studies to get a job at a bank doing finance or in the treasury department. So I think those are nuances that are important, I think, for us to just highlight as well.
That's a really, really great point. And so now what I want to do is I want to turn it over to our students. No, do we have Nyasha Crispin there?
Yeah.
Nyasha, where's Nyasha?
She's coming. Yeah.
So Nyasha, can you maybe just... So I have a question for you, Nyasha. Let's say the World Bank has decided, right? So World Bank, which is the organization Tendai works with, they have decided they want to give a loan to Zimbabwe of $100 million. What do you think Tendai's job would be in ensuring that this happens?
Wow.
And guys, you should help her out. Some of you guys that were listening earlier on, help her out. You think about some of the terms that were mentioned before.
I think he has to find out if Zimbabwe will be able to return the money.
And what do you? Okay, go ahead. Continue.
And look at all the financial accounts in Zimbabwe and make a financial model so that well, yeah, I think that.
Okay. And what do you think about that response, Tendai?
Well, I think when the World Bank makes out loans, it definitely expects them to be repaid, right? I should also say that the bank does also provide grants, which are, just free, so those don't have to be repaid. But yeah, a borrower's ability to repay the loan is something that's very important. And as you mentioned, right, we have to go through a process where you analyze all that information. So, for example, we look at what the proceeds or the what the loan will go towards, right? If, say, for example, the World Bank is, interested in making a loan, this 100 million loan to Zimbabwe for developing, I don't know, say a toll road system, right? We will also want to see, how that money will be used, right? And secondly, whether that toll road project will be able to make enough money for the government of Zimbabwe to repay this loan, right? We don't want to overburden them, right? Because if we're making this loan together with, maybe other commercial finance players, right? They'll also be interested in getting their money back, but not just that, they also want to make, a bit of a profit. And essentially, that's what banks do, right? They make out loans because they'll get the loan, principal back, and they'll also get interest. So you're definitely spot on in terms of assessing a borrower's ability to repay. That's definitely key.
Good job. Now we have a question. Another question. Is Sharon there?
No.
Oh, Natalie?
Yes.
Yes, Natalie, please come to the front. So Natalie, Munya's organization, Nike, right? They're looking to expand their operations throughout 20 countries in Africa. Based on what you know about Munya's job, what do you think, what are maybe 3 things Munya should first think about in terms of this expansion strategy? And guys, help her out as well.
Okay, you first have to check if there's websites enough. And
Sorry, can you speak a bit louder?
he has to check if the resources required are enough, and also the type of things.
I don't think we heard you. I didn't quite hear what you said there. Maybe try one more time.
He had to check if the resources are enough and the type of things which he has to expect.
Did anyone on the panel manage to get that one?
They need to check that something is enough. I got that point, but I didn't catch the rest.
Yeah, there's a bit of feedback that's distorting the sound on my end.
Okay, so maybe Farai, would you be able to just type a response for us? Then I can address it to everyone else. Okay, so
Check if the resources are enough.
Or resources.
okay, so you said check. Number one, you said check if Nike has enough resources. And then number two,
The type of industry.
the type of what?
Finding internal or external.
Okay, so the type of finance that they need.
Internal.
And then the third thing,
Cost of expansion.
the cost of expansion.
Nice.
You guys sound fancy.
Right?
Okay.
And taxation.
And the what?
Taxation in different states.
The taxation in different states. Okay. Those are good. So, Munya, based on those 4 pieces of information that the team at St. Dominic's has provided, would you say that that's sufficient, or there are a few other things they should think about?
That's great. Let me just make sure I got all the points correctly. All right. They talked about the taxation in the different countries.
Yes.
The cost of expansion. And then, does Nike have enough resources?
Yes.
What was the fourth one?
The type of finance. Type of finance. Source of finance.
Source of financing. Yeah.
So the source of finance, whether it's internal or external financing.
Awesome. Oh, that's really great.
Wow.
Yeah, I think
Smart.
this is really awesome. I think you have a really great answer. All those are things that Nike would need to think through, obviously, as they develop the strategy for building their business in Africa. So that's really great. I can see that some of you are taking MOB and economics, and that's really great. So the other thing that you guys need to think about is actually, like, sometimes when you look at a business, this is the part where finance starts to do a crossover with another subject called geography. And it was one of my favorite subjects when I was studying. So Taku's point says, hey, you want to expand in Africa. So maybe the first place is probably like go to like literally what you study in geography to say, hey, will we actually be able to make money in Africa? So it's all the typical statistics that you study in geography to be like, how many people are in the different countries within Africa? What are the ages? What's the population of each country, right? What are the ages of those people? Of those people, how many actually participate in sports or are exposed to sports? So we can actually see how many people are more likely to buy our products. So first and foremost, we want to understand, are we going to be able to make enough revenue, right? To actually cover the costs that we'll incur to actually run a profitable business, right? That is very sustainable into the future. So it always starts with the consumer. understanding the consumer, and the consumer are people that consume our products. So your answers like were really great, but I just wanted to also point out like other subjects like geography, which expose you to understanding people as consumers, can also help you in making business decisions about kind of your growth and your expansion.
Thank you, Munya. So we have another question. Do we have Valeria there? Or Valeria? Yes, Valeria, please come to the front. So I think we're all aware that in Zimbabwe we had severe floods recently, and those impacted a lot of farmers. So those farmers, the majority of them got insurance from a company that Tafara works for. So you need to tell me, guys, in terms of the damages that have been incurred to these farmers, and now they're making claims to their insurance companies, what do you think someone in Tafara's role needs to do? This huddle up sounds very intense. Huh?
Okay, so we should get to analyze the amount of money they have and the amount of money that they need to give equitably to the farmers and how much they're going to give.
And can you guys give me 2 points on a follow-up question, which is what do you think Tafara will then have to do in terms of, in case something of this nature happens in the future? What do you think he needs to look at to ascertain if this type of issue would impact the insurance company again in the future?
Okay, so we can get needs to analyze the number of farmers that are affected by now, so they take budget and
We can't hear you.
I think he needs to analyze the trend of the farmers that are affected now, so that maybe we can budget for the future.
Did you get that, Tafara?
Not really. I think I got the part that they need to look at the claims and the damage for the farmer so that they can budget for the future.
So that was the main point, or were there two that you gave? Only one. Okay, so we hand it over to you, Tafara. Maybe you can let them know your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer. But the issue with actuarial science is it's not as simple as saying that simply because last year there was a flood and we paid out $10 million, it doesn't mean that next year there's going to be another flood and that we're going to also pay out $10 million. So what you need to look at is you need to look at a lot of historical data. So you analyze over the last 50 years, what is the probability that there is going to be a flood in any given year. So then you calculate what is the probability that there's going to be a flood next year. You then also look at the severity of these floods to then say, in a year when there's a flood, how bad are these floods? Do these floods usually cost $10 million worth of damage, or maybe sometimes worse, or maybe sometimes less? So you then develop an actuarial model that then says this is the probability that there's going to be a flood next year. Given that there's a flood next year, what do we think is going to be the severity of that flood? And then having gotten that, you then say, what then is the probability that a person will be, one of our customers will be affected? Because simply because there's a flood in Harare, not everyone in Harare is our customer. So we are only responsible for paying out to our customer. So we're then able to come up with an amount of money in terms of this is how much we expect that it is going to cost us next year. Then we put all our expenses on top of that to say if we expect to pay out $10 million in claims next year, for us to run our business, we incur costs of 1 million. So therefore, we need to charge all our customers 11 million. So if we have 1 million customers, and we have to recover 11 million, we charge every one of them $11. So that's what we would do to then prepare for the following year in sort of simple terms.
Thank you.
That was really great. Thank you guys for participating. So what I want to do is now open it up to you guys for the next 5 to 10 minutes, because I know you have to go for supper soon, to ask any other questions that you may have for the panelists.
Okay. It's happening.
Yep.
Okay, so this question is a bit, it's connected with finance, but then it's not exactly in the finance department. It's directed to Ragbi. You talked about the international court. You talked about the international court to settle investment disputes. I'd like to know more about that.
So are you referring to the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes? Okay. So it's one of the 5 member institutions of the World Bank Group. And in a nutshell, what it does is, say, for example, the World Bank is helping to develop a dam in Haiti, for example. And, maybe that dam will displace, say, 100 villages or something like that. Or, for example, an energy company makes an investment in the Amazon, for example, and maybe some of their practices are harmful to the environment. There's an oil spill, for example. Who pays for that cost? If there are abuses, for example, who settles them, that sort of thing. And so it's an arbitration or mediation institution. They helped to settle some of those investment issues as and when they arise. And Tonga and Contessa, feel free to chime in if you, or anyone else on the panel, if you guys know more.
Yeah, I mean, my roommate used to work for that branch, and that sounds pretty much like what she did. Yeah. Meeting up with like officials and I guess settling the different disputes and deciding who pays for what. Yeah, I don't know if they have. I have a question for you, Tendai. I don't know if they have the means to enforce. Like if they come up with a decision, if they have the means to enforce and make sure that the guilty party actually does pay.
I'm not too sure how that works.
Okay.
But yeah, this could be something you ladies research more. I could try and think of contact who works there, or see if I can send you guys more information and you can read up on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question.
So I have a question for Munya.
Oh, and before we do our question asking, don't forget you have to introduce yourself, right? So name and what you're studying, then ask your question.
Right, I have a question for Munya. How did you get?
No, you have to introduce yourself before asking the question.
I am Annie Tunokubete. I'm doing math, account, and business studies. Yes. Munya, how did you get started with Nike?
What was the question?
How did you get in touch with Nike? Like, how did you get started?
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. So it's it's a fun company to work for. I wish I had a fun story to tell you guys, but was after I finished business school, I was working in Silicon Valley, doing investments as a venture capitalist, and Nike was looking. One of the things that they were looking to do was build up their innovation center, which speaks to kind of when they make new shoes, how to make them in a innovative and sustainable way, so that they can improve the technology in their manufacturing methods, as well as the materials that they use to manufacture the shoes. So for that, they posted a job at my business school. I went to Harvard Business School. They went to Harvard basically to ask to post a job to look for people that are interested in investing in innovative technologies. So that and I saw the job. I thought it was really interesting. I recognized that Nike was an interesting brand to work for. So I decided to just kind of apply for that role and explore. So I applied for the role from that perspective, and then they reached out to me, and we started the interview process. And I recognized, hey, this could be something that I could have fun doing. Out here to Portland to meet with the team, and I saw their campus, the world headquarters for Nike. It's a beautiful campus, and it's so it was motivating and inspiring. And for me, like just having grown up in Zimbabwe and having had contacts with the brand, it was just the right thing for me to do. So when, they gave me the job offer, I picked up my bags and moved from San Francisco and came out here to Portland. That was 4 years ago, and it's been fun so far. So so I actually at that point was doing innovation and business development. So that's the other thing about maybe being an investment banker. It doesn't constrict you to just doing finance. So I did that job for the first 2 years, but then I wanted to kind of get closer and deeper with the core business, not just kind of how we come up with new technologies and innovations for making shoes, but also how do we sell shoes and how do we actually make money and things like that. So that's how I then moved to become a finance director in the finance department, trying to figure these things out. And I think one of my future jobs, I think the next thing I want to do with Nike is go to Europe. Amsterdam is where our European headquarters is, and then maybe at some point come back home to Africa to run our Africa business. So that question and that answer that you guys gave me about how we will grow our business in Africa was perfect, and I'll be looking to hire some of you guys to help me run that business.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So I think we are now out of time because you guys have to go. So I really want to say two things. Thank you very much to our panelists. Maybe we can give them a round of applause for coming and spending time with us today. Then I want to say thank you very much to Farai for ensuring you got the connection together and we finally got to get our fellows connected with the panelists. And the last thing I'm going to say is hopefully, if you guys have more questions, we'll try and ensure we get you connected to the panelists. And you can send them emails when you have your sessions, and you can even try and schedule a video call with them on one of the Fridays to talk one-on-one on any other questions you may have or any advisement that you guys may have. But thank you very much, fellows, for being incredibly smart in thinking about your questions and participating. So have a wonderful weekend. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye.
Good luck.
Take care. Bye.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm going to also send over an email to you all panelists just to get your feedback, right, on how the session went and how we can improve things. I know definitely the hardware connectivity piece was very, very challenging, but we want to make these sessions as interactive as possible, make them better, stronger, so your input is really, really valued. And I don't know, I'll also send you all an email to ask if it's fine if I can share your email addresses with the students for them to reach out to you. And then we can take it from there. But just kind of initial thoughts, Contessa, how did you find the session?